1970s, victory celebrations were almost an annual event in Pittsburgh. Through 1978, head coach Chuck Noll's Steelers had won 3 Super Bowls over the past 5 years. They were the dominant team of the decade. In 1979, the Steelers had company at the top. That fall, the Pittsburgh Pirates won their second World Series title of the decade. Pittsburgh had become the city of champions, a place where winning it all had become expected.
I think the greatest thing that we can all do this winter is to go wherever we're going in our travels and say proudly, we are from a city that has nothing but champions.
The feeling in that town was just tremendous. You know, once you have a taste of victory, it's awful hard to give that up. The attitude was, we're going to win this every year. The Steelers will never lose.
I knew nothing else than that. I came in '74, and my first year we went to the Super Bowl, and the next year we went to the Super Bowl, and then a couple years after that we went to the Super Bowl and won again. So I grew up in that. This is what we do.
We went on the football field expecting to win every game that we walked out there. And that's the type of leadership we had. People that hated to lose. They feared losing. That will to win is very hard to beat.
By 1979, the Steelers had become larger than life. Their roster was filled with future Hall of Famers, the most recognizable names and faces in football.
Hey, kid.
Joe.
However, the Steelers didn't get caught up in their accomplishments. Instead, they focused more on the future than the past.
We very rarely, as a team, wore Super Bowl rings. It was still the challenge of doing it again and not trying to live on what happened the year before.
After winning our third Super Bowl in '78, I don't think Chuck gave us enough time to celebrate. He came right out and predicted we were going after it again, that he didn't feel that we had peaked as a team yet. And I can remember, getting home and Jack Ham calling me up and saying, hey, you ready to go out and practice on Tuesday? Did you hear what Chuck said?
For him to say that he thought we could be better, that meant something. That meant that even though we won the Super Bowl, that we can hold our heads up just a little bit higher. But he also issued the challenge in saying that. The challenge was to do it again.
The other incentive for us was that at that time, the finances wasn't there. We didn't make the kind of money that we wanted to make. So, shucks, you make $25,000 from playoff to Super Bowl. And guys, that was more money than we made all year. So that was the incentive for us to go out and win.
We knew that in order for us to have our place in history, to be the first team to win 4 Super Bowls would set us apart from any other team that played the game to that point.
I think that's on everybody's mind, that 4th Super Bowl, to do it again. And we're going for it. Maybe we are a team of destiny, I don't know.
And growing up, I read a lot of books, particularly like books about guys that came out from out of nowhere. The Westerns where the hero arrived just in the nick of time to save the day and ride off into the sunset. I kind of like those kind of stories about folks that were not supposed to do anything, that the world saw them as maybe something less, and they felt within themselves that they were something better, and that they proved the world wrong. So I identify with that.
The 1979 Steelers were filled with stories of men who had proven people wrong. Players like Vietnam veteran Rocky Bleier, quarterback Terry Bradshaw, who had overcome early career struggles to become an all-pro, and an undersized linebacker named Jack Lambert, who had grown into one of football's most intimidating defenders. But no player embodied that underdog spirit more than John Stallworth. As a child in Alabama, Stallworth contracted a virus that temporarily left him unable to walk.
I was paralyzed for about 2 weeks in the hospital for about that length of time. I remember laying in my hospital bed and looking outside, and it was during the summer months, and under normal circumstances, I'm out there running with the kids, and I can't do that. I thought about dying, and for gosh, about 3-4 years even, that was a constant thought of mine, that at one point I'm going to die. I'm not going to be here. And that when that happens, then I'm going to be gone, and there'll be no memory of me at all. And so that motivated me to want to do something to be remembered. That I just wasn't going to go through this life and pass from this life, and people didn't remember me for something.
By 1979, John Stallworth was becoming hard to forget. He was part of one of the most potent passing attacks in the league. However, for most of the decade, the Steelers' offense was overshadowed by arguably the greatest defense of all time. One of the best defensive lines in history included Mean Joe Green, Dwight White, and a quiet pass rusher named L.C. Greenwood. But some wondered if age would catch up to the defense in 1979. Greenwood, number 68, was in his 11th season, and half the Steelers' starters were at least 30 years old.
We wasn't getting older. We were just getting more mature in what we were doing. You know, that getting the older stuff, that's you know, if you got it in the heart, you know, then all that other stuff don't matter.
In 1979, the Steel Curtain was being fortified with younger linemen like number 76, John Banaszak. Banaszak came to the Steelers in 1975, their second Super Bowl season, and by 1979 he was a starter. Still, he never imagined himself growing up to be a Steeler.
I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. Everybody that I grew up with was a Cleveland Browns fan. All my friends and all my relatives and all my neighbors. I wasn't drafted in the 1975 draft, which made me a free agent coming out of college. And I was contacted by 5 teams, the Steelers being one of them. All my years of football, I never played on a championship football team. And I felt that if I signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, my chances of playing on a championship team obviously were very good. And that night I called my dad up, and I said, "Dad, I've got great news for you. I've just signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers." And he hung up on me. I heard the click on the phone. I called him right back and I said, "Dad, I know that it had to be a bad connection that you didn't hang up on me." And then my dad started. He said, "How am I going to tell your mother? How am I going to tell your 6 brothers and your sister that you signed with the hated Pittsburgh Steelers?" But right before we hung up, he told me, he says, "Well, I guess I got to become a Steeler fan, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, if you want to see me play, you're going to have to become a Steelers fan because I'm going to make that team. And I want you to be at our games." And he did. He became a Steeler fan, and a very proud Steeler fan, who happened to go to 3 Super Bowls. That wouldn't have happened if I signed with the Browns.
The Steelers gained a new supporter, and Pittsburgh fans gained a player with whom they could identify. On a team filled with future Hall of Famers, no player represented the city's blue-collar image better than Banaszak.
I really do feel that we had a connection. You know, they thought I carried my lunch pail to practice with me, and I did. I had to. I wasn't good enough to not practice well during the week. And I think the Pittsburgh fans appreciated that. You take a look at the stands in Pittsburgh and all the hard hats, those guys are all steel workers. They had something that I grew up with. Both my grandparents were steel workers. My dad worked in a factory all his life. I can remember that picture of Bradshaw and Willie Stargell with the hard hats on in Sports Illustrated and thinking, you know, that's the perfect background for me. I'm in a steel town. I'm close. I have a relationship with these people. They've made this big, huge banner and it was like 40 yards long, and it said, "We love the Steelers, the Banaszak bunch." And they hung it up in the end zone. The Steelers got upset about it and said, "The sign's too big. It takes away from all the other signs. We can't have that sign anymore." And they had to sneak the sign into the game. It was pretty cool having all those guys be fans of mine for the reason of being just a guy who was very similar to them.
The odds that a football team would win 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, at some point you think maybe the odds are against us. Maybe they're just things are going to line up against us at some point.
Teams that win the Super Bowl are usually teams that have the fewest injuries. Injuries just haunted the '79 Steeler team. We started the season without Joe Green. We start the season without Rocky Bleier and Lynn Swann. I mean, it just down the line.
They would end the season without safety Mike Wagner and number 59 Pro Bowl linebacker Jack Ham.
One of the greatest things that we did in 1979 has to do with the depth that we had. A tremendous amount was expected out of our backups.
With Joe Green and L.C. Greenwood injured early in the year, reserve defensive linemen needed to step in and learn quickly from the veterans.
I gotta get some driving him back on.
You gotta get some depth straight over.
That's what I'm saying. All you need to do is get maybe about a yard.
No, you need more than that because you're gonna be so far up the field.
It's always great that you got guys that you can count on. If they can't step in and pick up the slack when you're there, then I don't think they should be there. And that's what we had. They didn't have the same talents or abilities that we had, but they were players. Then they wanted to play, and they got a chance to play, and they cashed in.
Number 67, Gary Dunn, became a regular starter and had 3 sacks in the Steelers' season-opening win over the Patriots. The following week against Houston, number 65, Tom Beasley, led the team with 11 unassisted tackles. In the 38-7 win, John Banaszak had 2 sacks and his only career interception. Banaszak and the patchwork line helped the Steelers field the AFC's top-ranked defense. Banaszak became the team's most consistent lineman over the first half of the season, and the only one to start every game in 1979. Over the second half of the year, he split time with veteran Dwight White, but he still produced the best season of his career.
I knew I was playing in a situation where I wasn't going to be the showcase defensive lineman. Heck, I was playing with the greatest players that ever played a game. And all I wanted to do was to be able to play well enough to get the respect of my teammates. That was very important to me. When you put that helmet on and you buckled your chin strap, you had to leave it all on the field. And in 1979, I left it all on the field.
Like many of his teammates, Banaszak fought through a variety of aches and pains to make it through the season.
During the season, you're going to get banged and bruised and beat up. You're going to have a knee, an ankle, an elbow. Unless it's real bad, you got to play through that pain. And a lot of us did.
Sam Davis had a bad leg who was playing on, and Corson, of course, didn't play at all. Mullins was in there with an injury. So was John Kolb with an injury, and then Sam got hurt, and we had Peterson in there who also had an injury, was less than 100%. So our offensive line really, really was hurting.
When injuries limited Franco Harris early in the year, third-year back Sidney Thornton helped carry the Steelers to a 5-1 start. But even Pittsburgh's backups needed backups. Thornton also went down later in the year.
Sidney hurt his ankle, and he tried to recover as quickly as possible. Unbeknownst to everybody, Sidney goes back home to Louisiana, and he gets hooked up with this healer down there.
I think her name was Miss Rudolph.
Miss Rudolph. And he comes back, and he's starting to carry this bucket around with him.
She gave Sidney a concoction that was full of vile kind of stuff.
And it was something like horse urine, rubbing alcohol, vinegar, some kind of pepperweed, seaweed. It smelled. Nobody would walk around him.
I didn't get close enough to smell it. You know, I heard what everybody said. I didn't have any particular desire to see that, so I didn't get close enough.
Sidney truly believed that if he stuck his foot in his bucket 3 times a day, that he would get onto the field quicker.
He probably would have been back 2 weeks earlier had he not done that.
The Steelers may not have believed in magic potions, but they had a perfect chemistry. No member of the 1979 Steelers ever played for another NFL team before arriving in Pittsburgh. They are the last NFL team to win a championship with entirely homegrown talent.
I think we had, for that period of time, a Steeler-type player. The question to be answered, though, is did we draft them or did we make them? I think we had the ability to draft good players, and some fit right away. But I think the true measure of why we were successful is that we were able to mold those people to be what we needed them to be.
The 79 season, as the Pirates kept winning and they're in first place, and the Steelers coming off of their Super Bowl, I think that put a little added pressure on us.
In October, the Steelers were in first place, but the focus in Pittsburgh had shifted to the team with whom the Steelers shared Three Rivers Stadium.
They were only 2 doors down the hall from us, so we would come in from practice. In the baseball players' locker room, they had a lot of food, so we'd go down there and sit and watch Stargell and Doc Ellis and Candelaria and those guys. We were all pretty good friends.
I can remember going out on the field and do some running, and the Pirates would be out there practicing for their game that evening, and Chuck Tanner would pull us over and say, "Come here, try this drill," and then we'd go shag fly balls.
Swan wants to play on the baseball team during the summer. He wants to be a pinch runner or hitter. Bradshaw tells me he can really throw the ball hard, and they root for each other. And just to give an example, it was right before 2 games to go in the season, and the Steelers were coming through the hall. And Bradshaw came up and he says, "Hey, Coach, go get him." He says, "You guys can do it." He said, "We're all for you." And it really makes you feel good to know that these guys are really wanting you to do a job too.
I went to the World Series game the Friday night, and the Orioles beat them in Game 3. On Saturday, we traveled to Cincinnati, but everybody's listening to the World Series game. And the Pirates lose on Saturday. So all we're talking about in the locker room before the game against Cincinnati is the Pirates are down 3-1. Can they come back? And, you know, and we're debating back and forth as to whether or not that can happen 5 minutes before we go out on the field to play the Bengals. And we go out on the field in Cincinnati and commit 9 turnovers.
Against the 0-6 Bengals, the Steelers were stunned, 34-10. The loss dropped Pittsburgh to 5-2 and into a first-place tie with the Houston Oilers.
The first thing we think about getting back into the locker room was whether the Pirates won. Chuck Noll gathered everybody together, and he said if he didn't know better, he'd have thought that we were throwing that football game.
Chuck never raised his voice. You know, it was just the tone of voice. You know, it was, you know, when you saw that he no longer had lips, his mouth was so tight that you knew he was really upset with you.
It was almost like you did something wrong when you were a young kid. The worst thing you could do was disappoint your parents. The worst thing we could do as a football team was disappoint Chuck Noll.
Head coach Chuck Noll saw a disappointing trend all season. Though the Steelers finished the year with the NFL's top-ranked offense, they also committed a league-high 52 turnovers.
I don't know that we ever got to a point where we said, okay, this is why this is happening. We know now why it's happening, we can make the correction. I don't think that we, made the correction. I mean, through the Super Bowl, we didn't make the correction.
After a while, it was almost expected that, Bradshaw was going to throw 27 touchdown passes, but he was going to throw 25 interceptions too. And that was okay with us.
The Steelers usually could overcome their quarterback's inconsistency. But when Terry Bradshaw threw 5 interceptions in San Diego, the Steelers were blown out, 35-7.
That was pretty embarrassing. They just annihilated us out there. We were stunned because they had beat us before we knew what was going on.
The Steelers never dropped out of first place, but Chuck Noll's team appeared vulnerable, and there were questions as to whether the Steelers could join their neighbor Pirates as champions. The Steelers' 1978 season had ended with a win over the rival Dallas Cowboys in Super Bowl 13.
Touchdown, Pittsburgh, Johnny Stallworth.
After Super Bowl 13, there was still some talk from the Dallas headquarters that they were cheated out of that game. They were the Dallas Cryboys. They were America's team, but in Pittsburgh, they were the Dallas Cryboys. They still cannot accept the fact that they got beaten Super Bowl 13. Well, it's over. Let's make this perfectly clear. You got beaten Super Bowl 13. And if you think you had any chance to beat us the following year, we put that to bed.
In Week 9 of 1979, the Cowboys looked to avenge their Super Bowl loss.
They were talking a whole bunch of trash about what they were going to do and all that, and they were coming into Pittsburgh. Bad mistake.
The Steelers always enjoyed proving that brute force could beat Dallas finesse.
L.C. Greenwood laid a lick on Roger Staubach that I could still hear inside of my ears. And Roger just slumped over and was out of it with a serious concussion that took him out of the ball game.
Staubach really took a shot. L.C. Greenwood is the man who hit him, I believe.
I'm going to blame Roger for that because I thought he was going down. I'm coming from the other side, and I'm flying. And I said, Roger, get down. I'm saying that to myself. Get down. And as soon as he broke out, I just ran right through him. We didn't go out there with the intention of trying to hurt anybody, but, it's just, how football is. Heck, if your mother is on another team and she's coming out to play and you got to play against her, then you're going to hit mama and try to win the football game.
It was Staubach's last game against the Steelers. The quarterback retired following the season.
The next year, I was down in Dallas, and I'm in the end zone loosening up, so I hear this voice in the background, L.C., my kids hate you. I look around, it's Roger. And he says, L.C., my kids hate you. I said, why? Because their dad is not playing anymore. Well, Roger's almost 50 years old now. It's time to hang it up,
L.C. Greenwood may have forced more than a few quarterbacks into retirement. During the 70s, he was one of the most feared pass rushers in the game. Yet, when his career began, the former 10th-round draft pick was often overshadowed by teammate Joe Green.
During the game, the PA announcer would call out the person on the tackle. Joe Green on the tackle. Well, I was getting up off from the tackle, and I look around, and Joe wasn't there.
Ironically, an injury to his ankle helped Greenwood finally get noticed on the field.
The doctor suggested I wear high-top shoes, and at that time, there were no high-top shoes in the league, so they went around and they got these old black high-top shoes. I talked the trainer into changing the color of the shoes, and he wanted to paint them white, and I says, no, I don't want white shoes, because Joe Namath wear white shoes. He said, well, let's leave them black, ugly black shoes. No, I don't want them black. So he says, why don't I paint them gold? So just kidding, I said, yeah. And I thought they was the ugliest thing, and I said, wow, I can't wear these.
The gold shoes grew on him, and for the rest of his career, Greenwood stuck out in the crowd.
I would make the tackle and I'd roll over where my feet was in the air so that the PA announcer knew that it was L.C. Greenwood on the tackle and not Joe Green. And I noticed at that point, that's when they realized that I was on the football field. There was L.C. Greenwood on the tackle. Seriously.
He made gold shoes look pretty good out there. After he retired, he had gold golf shoes, he's got gold dance shoes, he has gold everything, and he makes it work. There's not too many people that can say that. Fashion-wise, LC makes it work.
Even in the disco-crazed 70s, Greenwood's flair for fashion was hard to top. But the outfit he always looked most impressive in was his number 68 jersey. And in 1979, his ability to rush the passer never went out of style. In Week 13 against the Browns, Greenwood recorded 4.5 sacks, all in the fourth quarter and overtime.
They couldn't block him. It was incredible. That was the finest performance that I've ever seen a defensive lineman have in 15 minutes of football.
Greenwood's extraordinary effort helped Pittsburgh erase a 10-point fourth-quarter deficit. The overtime win raised the Steelers' record to 10-3 and kept them in a first-place tie in the AFC Central.
The snap, the ball is down. Barr kicks it. Long enough, high enough. It is good. It is good. The ball game is over. It's sudden death.
By 1979, John Stallworth and Lynn Swann had become football's most dynamic receiving tandem. But they weren't always equal partners. Earlier in his career, the soft-spoken Stallworth was hardly noticed next to his flamboyant teammate.
The public's perception of who the receiver was with the Pittsburgh Steelers was always Swann. I've gotten the question, oh, you played with Swann? And I always wanted to respond, no, Swann played with me. I felt that I was always competing with that. And that was a motivating factor for me, to make sure that people understood that I was as good or better. I do remember a game when I caught one pass during the course of the game and came into the locker room the next day. Chuck comes in, he said, well, John, we won the football game, how you feel? And my words to him was, Chuck, I told him I was pretty pissed off. And he says, why? I said, well, I only caught one pass. And he said, but John, we won the football game. Which would you rather have, winning the football game or catching a lot of passes? And my response was, Chuck, I'd like to think we can do both.
In 1979, John Stallworth finally became the centerpiece of Pittsburgh's passing attack. With Swann bothered by injuries, Stallworth took over as the Steelers' #1 target. His 70 catches were, at the time, a franchise record, and his teammates voted him the Steelers' most valuable player.
He's breaking downfield, the 20, the 10, the 5, 75-yard strike to Johnny Stallworth.
Going through so many years of asking questions about who's the best, I think for me to have those guys and vote me the MVP was a confirmation that they thought I was good at what I did. It just gave me a great deal of confidence that they had some faith in me.
Stallworth helped the Steelers finish 12-4 and win their 6th straight division championship. In Pittsburgh, playoff time had become a holiday tradition.
Deck, Three Rivers with opponents, rivers, but if it's Miami, they'll cry for their mammy. Give us greasy, deck him easy.
In their opening playoff game against Miami, Stallworth and the Steelers jumped to a 20-0 first quarter lead and rolled to an easy win. The victory set up an AFC Championship rematch against division rival Houston.
Bradshaw with plenty of time. Let's go down the middle. There is Stallworth for the touchdown. Listen to this crowd. Look at those terrible calves flying, you betcha.
There's the MVP, the Pittsburgh Pirates, Willie Stargell. He came in disguise as a Houston Oiler fan. You know where his heart is, right here in the Steel City.
Well, they bill it as the city of champions.
The champions held a 17-10 lead. Late in the third quarter, Houston appeared to tie the game.
And here's the quick shot as they throw it out to the far side, and it is caught out of bounds.
I think he had 2 feet in. I got to say what I'm seeing. And he scored a touchdown on that.
I don't see 2 feet in. Renfro is upset. Nobody is called to play.
It's a touchdown. He's in. He was in. Damn it.
It was a tough call. And this might be a spot where an instant replay would be important.
Let's see if the feet come down now. He's got the ball. He does clearly get inside.
It is a touchdown.
No question about it.
The officials do not have the luxury that we enjoy of seeing that instant replay. The man on the spot didn't see it, so he couldn't call it. And now the Oilers are denied a touchdown.
The Oilers settled for a field goal and trailed 17-13.
You know, looking back on it, it appeared to me also that he was in. You know, just from the standpoint of did he get both feet down, and I think he did.
So what? If he catches the ball, he just ties up the game. But then we go down and score a couple times after that.
Again to Blyer. Blyer shoots over the right side, fights his way down. Blyer's in for the touchdown. The Steelers have won the AFC Championship again.
The Steelers were headed to their 4th Super Bowl in 6 years. For many outside Pittsburgh, however, this championship would be best remembered for its most controversial play.
It didn't matter to us whether or not he caught or didn't catch the football. There was no way that, even if they would have called that a touchdown, that you'll ever convince me that we would have lost that game.
Dan, is this a better Steeler team than the year before?
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. They're no slouch. They're as good as they've ever been. And they'll win the Super Bowl.
One reason why Pittsburgh is the city of champions is this man right here, the most valuable player in the World Series, Willie Stargell. Willie, you're working as a photographer today for National Magazine, but what do you think of the outcome of today's game?
Irv, I'm real impressed with the way these teams stack up. It's quite evident that I'm very much a Steeler fan. I look for a tremendous game.
3 months after the Pirates had won the World Series, the city of champions was on the verge of another title. The Steelers entered Super Bowl 14 as heavy favorites over the Los Angeles Rams. But in 1979, nothing had come easy for Pittsburgh, and nothing would change this day. Terry Bradshaw threw 3 interceptions in the game, and at halftime, the Steelers trailed 13-10.
I can remember seeing Chuck Noll smiling as he was running off the field. It gave me a feeling of confidence that we're behind 13-10, but there's our head coach running off the field smiling like, hey, fellas, we got him right where we want him.
What Noll and the Steelers didn't want was an injury to one of their star receivers. Early in the second half, Lynn Swann left the game for good. The Steelers now had to rely more heavily on John Stallworth. Trailing by 2 in the fourth quarter, the Steelers faced a critical 3rd and 8 and called Stallworth's number.
It was 60 prevent, slot hook and go. During the course of the week, we hadn't completed that pass. For whatever reason, it hadn't worked in practice. I didn't hear the play and think, oh yeah, this is it. This is the one.
Bradshaw calls out the signals. Remember, Pittsburgh, the most dangerous fourth-quarter team in the NFL.
And Bradshaw dropping back. Now Bradshaw pumping, firing downfield. There goes Stallworth. He pulls it in at the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5, and it's a touchdown for Pittsburgh on the ball to Stallworth.
My initial read on the ball, my initial thoughts, and this is exactly what I thought. And I said, damn it, Bradshaw, you've overthrown me. And really turned away from the ball and just started to run.
Swann lost for the ball game, but you still got a John Stallworth to come through and make the nifty catch and go all the way.
On the Steelers' next possession, Stallworth came through again.
And Bradshaw lets it fly down the middle, and there goes Stallworth again. And he has it. Does he hold it? He does. Stallworth beats the coverage again and takes it.
Same exact route that we had before. And I said, Bradshaw, you've underthrown me. I'm more open this time than I was last time. Had Terry thrown it out further, I think I would score it again.
They went straight down the middle on the bomb. And Johnny Stallworth on the receiving end.
Stallworth's incredible catch set up the touchdown that put the game away.
Harris slices off the left side for a touchdown. Franco Harris slashing off the left side for a Steeler touchdown. And Bradshaw comes to the sideline with his arms up in the air. Hugged by John Banaszak. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the champions of the National Football League for the 4th time.
The Steelers had made history, and their quiet receiver had saved the day. Just like the heroes he used to read about.
Here we are in the big game and given the opportunity to come up with the big play. The pressure's on, and yes, I was able to come up with that. And I see myself in those books coming through in the end. It was kind of unbelievable that we stand on top for the 4th time. Guys go through their career and most never stand there. Some stand for 1. If you're very fortunate, you stand for 2. But here we are, and we stand on top for 4 years.
How is Lynn Swann, his condition after he left the game?
Lynn got a bump on the head. It was kind of dizzy initially, and doctors felt that he shouldn't go back in the game. Luckily enough, we didn't need him near the end there.
Did you know that the pressure then was on you? You were going to have to carry the load?
I felt like it was going to be on me. It was no different than the beginning of the season when Lynn was hurt initially, and we played about 4 or 5 games without him, and I started catching a few more passes. It's nothing that I hadn't done all year, and I was up to the task today.
Take some time off now.
Rest the wheels.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. Now, we're gonna party tonight.
I know for you, the big thrill was being able to deliver to the City of Champions, your beloved Pittsburgh, this trophy.
Oh!
In Pittsburgh, yet another season ended with a victory celebration. A few weeks later, the city's two championship teams stood side by side in Washington.
It's my honor to add my voice to the salute that is being paid to the Pirates, to the Steelers, to Western Pennsylvania, and today especially to Pittsburgh. Thank you all very much.
In 2004, the 1979 Steelers were honored at Pittsburgh's Heinz Field. It was a team that marked the end of a championship era.
I did return your call, big guy.
The Steelers wouldn't win a fifth Super Bowl until the 2005 season.
No one's changed a bit in 25 years. It's amazing. Look at them. Same as they were.
I can look back. It's fun reminiscing when I'm around people like this. You know, you all won 4 Super Bowls. Yep. You are the first one won it for you. Yep. That's great.
L.C. Greenwood played until 1981 and left the game as the Steelers' all-time leader in sacks. After 1979, John Stallworth played 8 more seasons in Pittsburgh. He retired as the Steelers' all-time leading receiver, finishing with over 200 more catches than fellow Hall of Famer Lynn Swann. Unlike his more celebrated teammates, John Banaszak never set records and never was All-Pro. Yet he may have best exemplified the spirit of the 1979 Steelers. This was a team that relied on blue-collar players as much as black and gold legends, and each could be equally proud to be part of one of pro football's greatest dynasties.
After your career is over with, and you look back and you see all of the great football players that never played in a Super Bowl game, and you look at all the great players that never won a Super Bowl game, and for me to be part of 3 of them is something that certainly I'll always remember, and I will always be part of history. I will always be part of the game in the National Football League. And for my grandchildren to see, and that's something that is pretty special.
For additional video content, photo galleries, and more from America's Game, visit NFL.com/AmericasGame.